All right, let's begin today's webinar. Thank you very much everyone for joining us for the elcom SharePoint Intranet webinar, exploring the love-hate relationship. The webinar today is going to be presented by Michael Brule, Sales Engineer at elcom, and myself, Josh Anstey. I'm the VP of Partner Engagement at elcom. That's Michael and my contact details over there. So before we do begin, just a little bit about elcom, who we are as an organization. We're a globally recognized enterprise web content management solution provider. We're a Microsoft Gold certified partner, and the core product we've developed is the elcomCMS, which is a powerfully simple web CMS with over 100 modules of functionality out of the box, and it can be implemented for everything from websites, intranets, portals, mobile, social, learning management, online training, e-commerce, and online marketing sites. There's a lot of features and functionality and ways in which you can implement elcomCMS for your organizations. We also have global offices around North America and Asia Pacific as well. Just a little bit of housekeeping. On the right-hand side is the GoToWebinar panel. Throughout today's session, if there are any questions, please type them in the questions box on the right-hand side, and if we have enough time at the end, we'll be answering as many questions as possible. You can also follow elcom on all the social media channels, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. All right, so before we do jump into the webinar today, we want to start with a poll. And there's a quick poll we're going to be putting up on your screen now. And the question of the poll is, are you currently using SharePoint? So I'm going to launch this poll, and you should see that now on your screen. So if everyone could please jump in there and answer that question. There's 4 questions on the poll. Yes, you're happy with SharePoint. Yes, you're looking to move on though. No, you're happy with your current system. And no, you're not using SharePoint, but you're looking to move to it. So if everyone who's on the webinar today could please just jump in and vote on the poll over there. Got some very interesting results there. We are going to be sharing these results of the poll with you in the follow-up email that you're going to receive after the webinar. So it'd be great if everyone could please jump in and vote there. They'll be anonymous. We'll just be showing the statistics. But some very, very interesting statistics there. I'll give everyone about 5 more seconds to vote before we close off the poll. Okay, great. Fantastic. Thanks very much, everyone. And we'll be sharing those with you after the webinar and the follow-up email. All right, so to begin today's webinar, I'm going to be handing over to Michael. Michael's going to be running the webinar today. Over to you, Michael.
Hello, this is Michael with elcom. Thank you for joining us today for exploring the love-hate relationship with SharePoint. Let's just dive right in. So what I'm going to talk about today are 5 of the reasons why SharePoint are compelling, reasons why SharePoint is used in infrastructure and in corporations today. The first one is Microsoft Stack. It has a Microsoft Stack which is commonly used. People are used to using it. It's been around for a long time. Microsoft offers productivity suites, Microsoft Exchange, server, email, things of that nature. So it could seem sort of like a no-brainer. SharePoint is widely available. Another reason why Microsoft organizations use Microsoft is they might already have enterprise agreements, already have SharePoint inside their organizations. It came with some servers that they might have purchased. They're experimenting with it, so that sort of nature. Also, SharePoint has been coined the term inside of Microsoft and elsewhere, the Swiss Army knife. This idea means, the product is good for all. It can answer so many different reasons why you would want to deploy SharePoint. It can be compelling. What's also compelling about this idea is that a great many things. If we think that SharePoint can take care of all these things, all these reasons, there's benefits to that, but there's also pitfalls to going with that. Product rationalization is preferable. In this regard, similar to some of the other earlier points, an organization can reduce the number of technology. Also, other compelling reasons might be they're trying to streamline their process, things of that nature. And number 5, SharePoint is seen as an enterprise platform. Lastly, if SharePoint can do everything as a standalone product, the other side is that we frequently hear that it could be a great application, a great platform to build upon solutions. So many organizations out there have SharePoint, and for good reason. Some of these reasons play out well, and others do not. So let's look at the positives. 5 reasons why organizations love SharePoint. We have SharePoint as a powerful platform. No doubt about it. Architected properly, its core strengths, weaknesses, well understood, sufficient sourcing is a real asset. The cross-compatibility and extendability, especially in 2013, can help your overall business initiatives. But the key word here is platform. It's not Swiss Army knife, not one-size-fits-all, but platform. It integrates nicely with other offerings from Microsoft. This is undoubtedly true. It integrates nicely with different Office products like AD, if you have an AD infrastructure, Internet Explorer, Office 365, and so on. It plays nicely with others. Further to that point, if you have a .NET solution, you can build upon this as a platform. You can build .NET apps. You have a wide range of tools and products, management, dedicated management tools, social plugins, you name it. There's really a lot out there for SharePoint. You could probably find something that will suit your needs, done by a third party to extend SharePoint to make it work for you. And then there's lots of expertise out there. There's a huge Microsoft partner network. There's lots of Windows developers, people eager to help create solutions for you on this platform. So those are other compelling reasons why SharePoint is liked in organizations. And then lastly, it's dependable. It has Microsoft name, logo on it. It has a huge backing, lots of resources, technologies under the hood. So it's going to be around for a long haul. This quote is pretty good. It sort of sums it up nicely. When you think of SharePoint, there's no way I can send SharePoint over to my content authors. They won't just get it. They won't understand it. That's what usually happens. This is something I've heard over and over again in past projects that I've worked with dealing with SharePoint. I've heard from all sorts of people, both technical and non-technical, that the interface is too complex or it's not intuitive. So you can't really just set somebody there and say, go for it, because it becomes a big hassle and issue later on. Now that brings me to my next slide. I like the little sad face there. 5 reasons why organizations dislike SharePoint. The first one are core intranet capabilities. They're poor at best. When it comes to what we would classify as core intranet capabilities, most people think of content authoring, publishing, editing, social interaction, digital asset management, things of that nature. It's performed pretty badly in the past. 2013 is a bit better, so that's one thing going for it, and it can be compelling to stick with it that way. Hate is a strong word, but if we heard it used in the past, I've definitely heard it with past projects, that in relation to SharePoint, authoring capabilities are just a little weak. If you're thinking of key requirements for intranet, content authoring, simply presenting an attractive interface, easy to manage, easy to train people, there's probably better solutions out there. The other piece is mobile experience sort of disappoints at times. It's not extensible enough, and it's lacking, especially in 2010. SharePoint, I've seen organizations just drop the initiative for mobile. It's really geared towards intranet, and even with 2013, it's a little bit better, but still it has a lot of work ahead of it. Customization is usually always necessary. SharePoint does come with a base set of features, And you can definitely use those features to answer certain corporate problems or business initiatives that you're trying to solve, but most likely you're going to need customization. This means extra development work, more resources needed, longer time frame to get this up and running, things of that nature. And then, again, it can quickly get too complex and more expensive as you see that you're going down sort of a rat hole with some of these features and initiatives that can take a little too long to develop inside of the SharePoint platform. And then also SharePoint often fails to live up to expectations. So even after you go into making this site and doing all the singing and dancing, you still might be a little disappointed at the end overall results and expectations. So my next slide, 5 things that we think about when you have SharePoint in the mix. So what we do recommend about thinking about SharePoint on broader intranet strategies, the first one is organization needs versus easy options. Focus on your organization's needs, not just the easy option. Yes, you might have SharePoint, but really, is it the best option for your intranet? Typically, you find that it can be easy, but it ends up being more complex and costly in the long run. Short and long-term funding and resourcing. With this, intranet teams can build a budget, short and long-term. You can answer and reflect the size, scope, and complexity if you're using this type of tool or metric. But it's not really a launch it and forget it type of tool. Once you've built the intranet, there's a lot of real work that goes into optimizing it further. Further development, building capability basically begins after you deploy, because you would see where the shortfalls are. And then project timeframes. If you need to deliver a great intranet quickly, again, what works best tool for that may typically not be SharePoint in this regard. The platform, it's not going to go everywhere. It's workable. It's usable. It's a good platform, but still, when it comes to project timelines, it can be a little cumbersome. And the one-size-fits-all usually does not work. Another way of thinking of this Swiss Army knife is a one-size-fits-all. Now that's often not the path to success. You need a more focused goal and solution in mind. And then 5, it doesn't have to be either or an or decision. Subsequently, don't be afraid to have more than one system in place. It may be more complex in theory, but in actuality, having the right product or tool or solution, even if it's extra compared to SharePoint, you can definitely save huge amount of time and money. So that brings me on to my next slide. Here's a couple of SharePoint business cases we're going to go into. We're going to see how well it works with others, and also where it might not work as well. So in this section, we're gonna talk about a few business cases, 4 in particular, and what we're going to talk about today are portals, collaboration, interactive sites, and the Swiss Army knife approach. Portals. SharePoint as an information portal, it can excel in managing the storage and retrieval of information such as documents and digital assets, business units, etc. There are many nice features out of the box of SharePoint for managing documents in a Microsoft concentric environment. That they have different types of tools like alerts, versioning control. You can have also permissions-based authoring and things like that. I've seen also SharePoint can provide the right permission structure and business case to regulate the content. So if you have governance and permissions involved here, it's a pretty strong case. In particularly, it works well with project management tools. You have Microsoft Project, other third-party tools that work really well with creating SharePoint task lists, My past personal projects, I was able to create project sites that have task lists that can assign to different people, and it was fairly easy to deploy. The next one is collaboration. We use SharePoint for collaboration. It can excel in this. It integrates really nicely with Microsoft Office. If you're familiar with Microsoft Office tools like Word and Excel, it's sort of an extension of that. You have integration into SharePoint from Microsoft and the Office suite, so you can develop, you can actually publish directly to your SharePoint infrastructure or specific document libraries. You can also create different folders and see folder structures inside of SharePoint, things of that nature. So interactive sites. We use SharePoint for our website. It can be weak in this regard because we found that in this aspect, it could struggle to meet your requirements. Research has shown that SharePoint not only it doesn't have an intuitive structure or centralized website management that's focused on out-of-the-box use. So it's going to be a little cumbersome to have that structure that keeps everything organized, as well as keep the different types of pages aligned with your initiatives and your public-facing website. Increasingly, websites also need to adapt to the different mobile devices. Users are viewing them on many different devices, and SharePoint does struggle to really adapt to these types of needs of an organization. So the last one is a Swiss Army knife, IT Swiss Army knife. SharePoint is the one tool that we do it all, that will do it all. Examples of this, it fails over some of these because it's not a lightweight application. If you need this for a specific job, such as simply sharing files or instant messaging style communication, it can fall short. It does have a facility for connectivity, but it's still not the best option. And when you're thinking about successful federated search out of the box, it does have a good search option. There is extra add-ons that you can have for SharePoint, which will add really nice functionality, but it does extend the cost of your deployment of SharePoint. And the other reason it can be a poor performance in high volume transaction content. Sort of you need to access volume transaction content or database cleansing, mapping relation database. In these regards, it does fall a little short. To my previous point, when you're talking about the Swiss Army knife, it can fall short. It really comes down to understanding and defining your business requirements first, and then considering if SharePoint is actually the best fit. So what role does SharePoint play with elcomCMS? Well, I appreciate that it's not the only scenario out there. So in the next section, I'm going to talk about the relationship between elcomCMS and SharePoint.
Fantastic. Well, a lot of great information there. Before we do jump in to talk a little bit about the relationship between elcomCMS and SharePoint and how they can work together, we do want to run another quick poll, and I've put that poll up on your screen right now. So you should see that poll over there. If everyone please jump in and vote on this poll. The question for this poll we have on the screen right now is, how happy are you with SharePoint? And we've got 5 options: very happy, happy, not sure, unhappy, very unhappy. So those that are currently using SharePoint or work with SharePoint, it'd be great to get your feedback over there on that question, on that poll. We will be sharing the statistic results of these polls we have run through the webinar in the follow-up email that you received. So we will be sharing those for you. Give another few seconds over there, another 20 seconds or so for those that haven't voted to actually jump on there and quickly vote. We've got some very interesting results. We'll give it a little bit longer before we share those. All right, fantastic. Thanks everyone for voting over there. I'm going to close off this poll. As mentioned, we are going to be sharing these results in the follow-up email that you receive. But I appreciate everyone there providing their thoughts and feedback there and voting on that poll. We've got some great questions that have been coming through, so thank you very much everyone for posting those questions up in the questions box. We will be addressing them at the end of the webinar, so if there are any questions you have, please don't be shy, please feel free to type them over there and we'll do our best to address as many of them as possible. I'll hand back to Michael to run through a bit about elcomCMS and SharePoint.
Thank you, Josh. Excuse me. Now we're going to talk about a little bit of what Josh mentioned earlier about elcomCMS. elcomCMS is a platform based on .NET Microsoft technology. It's a web content management system that has over 100 base modules and features, as well as extra modules and connectors that integrate really nicely with SharePoint. The module that's relevant to today's webinar is called the SharePoint connector. The SharePoint connector works to extend SharePoint out of the boundaries of SharePoint itself. Often, strategies involve looking at for what features you can be added to your SharePoint infrastructure. However, our connector aims to add and empower SharePoint content by bringing it out of SharePoint and into context of CMS, elcomCMS. The two main strategies here are connection and migration. So this is focused, connection is focused on keeping your SharePoint Intranet infrastructure already in existence, but by leveraging and extending onto SharePoint content through plugging into elcomCMS. The migration path, this is a straight transition, and it's an elegant method for actually migrating all your content out of SharePoint into our elcomCMS. For those of you who were very happy and relatively happy with SharePoint, then a connection approach might be a powerful way to enhance your existing environment and to address maybe some of the issues that you have found within SharePoint itself. Or you may simply be looking for ways to extend content further, sort of outside the boundaries of that SharePoint can offer in, say, like a mobile site, or you don't want to expose your intranet. So things of that nature, it can be actually a really good solution. The SharePoint connector will synchronize document lists and web pages found within SharePoint. So you can actually map locations within your SharePoint infrastructure and have the full set of the elcom tool set at your disposal. To enhance your SharePoint content further, the content will actually sync with SharePoint. So you can ensure that your information within SharePoint is always synchronized and version controlled. So that really helps when you're trying to keep your existing workflow and business processes in place for the people who are keeping your SharePoint content up to date. Here are some examples of strategy for us inside of this connection approach. Excuse me. Using SharePoint connector as a gateway to your data, you can enhance your user experience, flexibility, while maintaining the data back inside of your SharePoint infrastructure. As previously mentioned, SharePoint is feature-rich platform. It's locally hosted intranet, but it's not so great in terms of performance while accessing content outside of SharePoint connector. The SharePoint connector will actually improve the accessibility and frequently access data. 1 second, please. I had to get a little drink there. My throat was itchy. Excuse me. So to continue on, another example where a connection strategy would be great is where you might want to provide access to content without making your SharePoint intranet publicly available. This will allow access to specific content as well as making it come through to our elcomCMS. For those of you who selected maybe not so happy or unhappy in the poll, this may be a positive move let's say if you're trying to move away. However, this requires two things, a business problem and a good understanding of how you want to actually use SharePoint to solve it. It's a great transition into the next slide. With regards to a migration approach, elcom SharePoint Connector maps the entire SharePoint lists and sites to a location within the elcom site, moving into elcom web pages, images, and documents within libraries, so that you can then control those images and assets from within inside of elcom. Some of the examples of a migration approach that might be more appropriate for you, where SharePoint is becoming financially unviable. Now you can, due to licensing costs or maintenance, certain SharePoint governance issues. Another issue or another scenario would be where you find you need more fine-grained approach, to your local content and to maybe have it locked within the larger SharePoint infrastructure. To illustrate this, this is a case study from a client that had a global SharePoint site, and it was basically hosted inside of UK. It was great for people in UK, but what you had happening in the AU team, the Australian team, is that the content was actually, the performance was actually really bad, really slow. You can see the nice little turtle there signifying that. So the option for us was, for this group, was to actually deploy elcomCMS and have the connector actually bring that data, all those assets locally, closer to the users who are going to be using that data, which improved performance greatly. In this case study, you can use, bring SharePoint to a local repository, which will increase your return on investment, because the time that people use waiting for documents to load or to download, it speeds up content access by bringing it closer to the local users, keeps content management inside of SharePoint. So if you do have those internal business flows and marketing people that are going to be controlling those assets or HR assets, that all still can stay inside of SharePoint. It also keeps content management within SharePoint. So if you have other versioning control, things like that of nature, that would also be helpful. It also reduces SharePoint licensing costs and maintenance costs. So SharePoint based their licensing on CALs and how many servers you have. If you have one SharePoint deployment and you have an elcom deployment, it will be much cheaper in the long run. So let's wrap up. As you've seen, what we covered today were reasons why people choose SharePoint. Consider it the top 10 reasons why you have a love-hate relationship with SharePoint. Like it works well with Microsoft products. Lots of people out there already are using it. Some of the business case scenarios with SharePoint, with success, with other where SharePoint has been successful or not so successful, as well as we've looked at the different portal collaboration, interactive sites, and Swiss Army knife business case scenarios. And then also we've looked at the SharePoint connector and how it could be used to extend your SharePoint content, and where it can also be used to provide a way to migrate away from SharePoint if needed, if that's the end goal. So I hope that this has opened up you for more discussion later. These are the reasons why I feel that it can be a compelling reason to use the SharePoint connector in these scenarios. And I think I will pass it over to Josh right now. Oh, let me finish up. There's one more, sorry. Last thing is points to consider. Firstly, make sure that you have a strategic objective. Make sure that this is going to serve your business needs. And then also make sure that you are defining what the users are going to be using the site for. If you need a mobile strategy, then maybe SharePoint might not be the best fit, and there's many other tools out there. Also, if if you need them to know that if you have to change your resourcing levels or consider any new technology solutions, this would be definitely a good thing to look into. And then also think of the long term. What do you want out of this? You know, understanding your intranet needs and requirements will definitely change and evolve over time. So definitely think if SharePoint may be the right fit or may not, and take all those things into consideration when you're deciding these things. So thank you again, and I will pass this over to Josh now. And thank you for attending today's webinar.
All right, fantastic. Wow, a lot of really interesting information there, and as hopefully everyone can see, there are great benefits with the elcomCMS and the SharePoint connector that we've got built in. There are a lot of questions that have come through, so I'm going to do my best to read out these questions to Michael and get Michael to answer these questions. So I'll get through as many as possible in just the next couple minutes. If we don't get a chance to get to your question, we will definitely follow up with you individually and answer those that we won't have time to get through today, because there's definitely been a huge amount of questions come through, which is great to see the interest and engagement around this topic. The first question, in fact, before I ask Michael the first question, Michael, one of the first questions, I'll give you a second to think about it, but one of the first questions that have come through is, what are the strengths of elcomCMS in comparison to SharePoint? So before I hand over to you to answer that, there are a lot of questions that have come through around connecting elcomCMS to other document management systems. So people have named a few other solutions they work with. They want to know if we do connect to them and integrate to them. There are a lot of other document management systems and applications that we do connect to and integrate to. There's some information on our website about some of those, but definitely please let us know. We'll follow up with you, and you can speak to one of your account managers or regional sales representatives, and they can tell you a little bit more about some of the other solutions that we do integrate to. So I just wanted to address that one because there's been a lot of different questions about that. So Michael, I'll hand over to you. The first question over here is, what are the strengths of elcomCMS in comparison to SharePoint?
Thank you, Josh. That can definitely, I guess that would really depend on what you're looking for. Again, like we spoke in the past earlier, the mobile capabilities, we offer true HTML5 and CSS3. So basically like a mobile capabilities when you're thinking of responsive design. And we also have a nice piece that can actually give you directed content for your mobile device, your specific mobile device. Also, social collaboration is really good. We have worked really hard in refining our social collaboration tools inside of elcomCMS. And then, some of the other might be, some of the complaints I've seen are with when you've developed a page or designed a page, how can you edit that stuff easily within inside the SharePoint? It's really hard to. So I would say that one of the other benefits are when you're really trying to customize or modify or edit a design that you've built in the elcomCMS, like master pages and whatnot, it makes it a lot easier, as well as more compelling reason to go with elcomCMS.
Great answer over there. Hopefully that answers the question for everyone. Next question I have over here for you, Michael. What type of analytics does elcomCMS provide? I know that's a big question, so I guess you can at least try scrape the surface at least of it.
All right, so that's a good question. Let's say we have an analytics module that works really well. We also work with Google Analytics, so you can actually plug that in and get those types of analytics. So with regard to that, we have a bunch of built-in reports and visual aids that you can pick in our admin section. So you can pull things like how many users are accessing certain type of content, is this content popular, what type of searches are being queried, how many times has someone downloaded a certain document. So things like that, we have a very powerful analytics engine that you can get really useful actionable data inside of our system.
Fantastic. We'll try and wrap up here with maybe two more questions we've had come through. There's been a lot of questions coming through, so we're not going to be able to get through to everyone's questions, but do appreciate them all. And those we don't get through, we'll follow up with individually. So we'll wrap up here with two questions. One of the questions over here is, does elcomCMS have the ability to like, comment, tag, or share content? So it sounds like a question there around the social functionality. Michael, do you want to answer that one, or I'm happy to chat about it? Okay, so I'll chat about that. It's definitely an area of the product that I love working with and using. The answer to that question is, do we have the ability to like, comment, tag, or share content? We definitely do. We've got a whole range of social functionality built in the platform where you can like content or call it whatever you want to call it and see how many people have liked that piece of content, comment on it and share the comments in your social stream. You can tag things. You can obviously tag specific users, use things like hashtags as well built into the platform, and the ability to actually share content around different areas, share images and documents and pieces of content around the place. So yeah, there's some pretty awesome social features and functionality built in the elcomCMS platform, and very easy to deploy and roll out. So that's some awesome functionality I love using. So yeah, thought I'd jump in there and answer that one over there. There's a lot of questions. I'm going to wrap up over here with this final question. And the final question we've had come through. Michael, I'll hand this question over to you. Question, SharePoint works well with Microsoft Office. How well does elcomCMS work with Microsoft Office?
So thanks, Josh. Yeah, how well does SharePoint work with Microsoft Office? Well, excuse me, it works very well. I know SharePoint has integration with their Office suite, so you can do a lot of things inside of SharePoint. We also have Office Connector that you can use with Microsoft Excel, PowerPoint, Microsoft Word. For example, like with Word, you can publish directly from your Word into your elcomCMS. You can create articles. You can see different structures and pick where you want to save these articles. And it puts up really nice, clean HTML up there, which a lot of times, you get other HTML or stuff in the back end or behind the scenes that can really make it more difficult when you're publishing through Word. We also have wonderful pieces inside of our editor, which you can actually strip out certain things that make somebody who's used to Word and they're doing, say, like if you're a content editor, where it can cause a lot of headache. We have really good tools in our editor which integrates really nicely to help strip out some of these things that can cause headache and keep the overall design clean as possible. So thank you.
All right, great. Thanks for the questions that have come through, everybody. There's a lot more questions. We'll get to those in the as a follow-up to you and try and answer them all as best as possible. But Michael, thank you for answering those questions we've had. So just to wrap this up, final slides over here to wrap up. In terms of sort of the next steps, what we can do in terms of helping you is speaking to you around your requirements, how you're using SharePoint, how you can work with elcomCMS and integrate and leverage that investment over there. Obviously, Michael's run through how we work together and what can be done. So at the end of this, you'll have a pop-up survey if you'd like to find out more and maybe see a demo of the connector in action and learn about the requirements, work with our team. Please select over there to request a callback in the follow-up survey. You'll also be receiving a copy of the webinar and the presentation slides as a follow-up, and we'll also be sure to include the statistics there from the polls that we've run. So really appreciate everyone joining us today. That's the contact details there for Michael and myself. So if there are any questions, please let us know. But thank you very much, everyone, for joining today. We appreciate you joining us. We appreciate the time and the questions, and a very, very exciting webinar, lots of fantastic information. And we're looking forward to working with you in your organizations and helping you in your current and future web initiatives and projects.